Greetings and salutations. This is Abe Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also reach out to us on patreon.com/The Bitter Truth, where you can become a bitter pill or a spoonful of sugar and bring a quality to your life that I am sure is sorely missing. Today, I'm very excited to have an author of a brand new book. I'm going to get to that in a second. His name is Bruce Sanborn. He's a writer. As I said, author, playwright from L.A. He's written for The Daily Show, Jon Stewart, Late Night with David Letterman. He's also an award-winning journalist and a screenwriter, and he was an award-winning journalist when they were still doing journalism, folks. Having won 4 Virginia Associated Press Awards for his work in radio news, one for Best Investigative Journalism, the Governor's Screenwriting Award in Virginia. His plays have been staged in New York City at such venues as the Westbeth Theater, the Homegrown Theater, the Ensemble Studio Theater. He is the creator of Dr. Cal Cox and of his book, Win, the Ultimate Success Guide for Losers, Freaks, and Miscreants. And I've read the book, and that's why I'm laughing, because it's funny as fuck. Bruce Sanborn, are you there?
David Sanborn, great.
Yeah, David Letterman.
Get the intro right. Thanks, Abe.
Yeah, hey, I conflated you with David Letterman, so I could think of worse things. But how are you this morning?
I thought you were conflating me with David Sanborn, who he's a great guy and a phenomenal musician, and neither comparison is negative. So that's all good.
There you go. It's better than being compared to, I don't know, John Goodman or something. I'm drinking beer this early in the morning in Austin, Texas. How you been? What's going on?
Well, I'm getting the book ready for release, okay, and having a lot of fun doing it, because I think it's a subject matter that not only is it fun, but I think it's important. We've seen kind of an explosion over the last 10 or 20 years of the personal development world, and with very little analysis of what's going on. It's almost become its own religion, with its patron saints, people like Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn, and then its apostles with people like Brian Tracy and Tony Robbins and so on. And there's a lot of people, speakers and coaches and so on, however you want to phrase them, who are doing a phenomenal amount of good work out there. But it's also a business, which is not necessarily bad, but there's also a lot of charlatans and con men and grifters who are completely, I feel, taking advantage of people and just in it for a buck and coming up with little catchphrases and tweaking this and tweaking that. And, becoming a life coach was what the term wasn't even around 10 years ago.
Right. And
now it's actually a profession. People put that on their resumes. Oh, I'm a life coach. What does that mean? Where do you go to school for that? Where do you, are there any qualifications? And I think back, it reminds me kind of show business. I had a friend many, many years ago. I still have friends, actually. But many years ago, there was this one particular friend who was a singer and an actress. And she was very excited because she felt her career was taking off, and she had a manager. Oh, my gosh, that was the biggest thing for her, because she's, right out of school. And I have a manager in Los Angeles, and I'm going places. Well, her manager was this woman who was renting a room in an apartment in North Hollywood, who didn't even have a car, and wasn't really managing her career as much as, just kind of grifting off of my friend.
Right.
She needed a ride, so she'd call, my friend, and my friend would pick her up and drive her wherever she needed to go. And, if she needed money, she'd borrow it from my friend. And so, but she was a manager. And I feel like we're kind of in that space now with the whole personal development world, where people are flocking to events and going to seminars and weekend things. And there's such a scam aspect to it. For instance, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I guess it was 3 years ago, I went to one such event. Now, the event cost $1,100 to attend, but we got in for free. Mm-hmm. And what had happened was virtually everyone there, and we're talking about 300-400 people were attending this thing. All of them got in for free. So it really wasn't an $1,100 event.
Right.
So the guy who was running it had told a bunch of vendors, people who were selling stuff, that he would have this room full of people who would be interested in buying their wares, and was charging them to be at his event, and then would give them a chance to get up in front of everyone and speak about how fantastic their product or services were. And they could pitch, and therefore they would make tons and tons of money, which he did. Unfortunately, there were over 100 vendors there, and he gave them each, I think, 2 minutes, and he had them in one big line
to pitch their stuff.
For the next 3 hours,
it was a pitch.
It was these vendors getting up and pitching their wares for their little 2-minute spiel, and it's just most people weren't paying attention. They were getting coffee. They were going to get something to eat. Nobody cared.
Right.
But the guy who was running the event made a ton of money. How? Off of the vendors, not off of the audience. And the audience wasn't buying anything. So he figured out a way of monetizing the personal development world.
And really quick, when you say personal development, I think most people know it better as self-help. I mean, that's usually the category at the bookstore. So just for clarity, I mean, you and I know what we're talking about.
Motivational, self-help.
Yeah, because every time I say personal development to somebody, they go, "What?" I go, like self-help. So, oh yeah. You know what I mean? I'm just going for clarity, but continue. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. But anyhow, he had figured out a way of monetizing the self-help world. And it's great for him, but it didn't do a damn bit of good for anybody else.
Right. Well, see, I'm
seeing this over and over and over again, even amongst the higher echelons. For instance, the great writer John Maxwell, who has written books on leadership. He's in his 70s, and he's one of the dons of this self-help world.
Yeah, he is.
He has a school that you can attend to become a public speaker.
Because we need more. Because we need more. We need more public speakers, right?
Well, yeah, we do not have enough. These people are paying. I don't know how much they're paying. But if you've got, to me, it's kind of like being in play production in high school.
Yeah.
You think everybody in play production is going to win an Academy Award.
Well, see,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but see, and then two things. I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a hot second. I mean, because there's like, for example, when you were a journalist, I don't know if I don't know if you majored in theater or journalism. But beyond that, you don't need a license to be a journalist. I didn't need a license to be a comedian for 10 years. I didn't need a license to be a musician in several bands for 20 years, right? You do it, you get it together, you get out and you play, and you're a musician, right? You
right.
You know what I mean? So to that end,
and I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's why I didn't say you need. Where do you get a degree? I said where do you learn this? Where do you get your education?
Right. And
two very different things.
Right. And then
Keith Moon never studied at Juilliard.
No, he didn't. Oh, that's the name of your book, by the way. Your next book, Keith Moon never studied at Juilliard. But the only point I was going to make too was that it's like it's the same thing. Like, just because somebody has a degree doesn't mean they're necessarily good at what they do or smart. They fail forward. And just like a lot of these guys, they go to a bunch of seminars, they absorb a bunch of shit, and then they think they got a clever, like you said earlier, they got a hook or a little mnemonic device or whatever. I'm sure we'll get into some of these as we go along today. But and they're not necessarily good at it. There's like you mentioned Jim Rohn earlier, Tony Robbins. There's only a couple of guys that are like really good at it because they don't kiss your ass. The rest of these people try to kiss your ass and they dive into this magical thinking, don't you think?
Yes and no. I think there's only about, what is it? There's only 33 plots. I mean, if you go back to Greek theater, there's only 33 stories that you can tell. It's just variations of those stories. So the same thing kind of applies to the self-help world. People only have a limited number of problems, although they are very personal to them. But the problem itself isn't really that different from other things. Well, the solutions are also pretty similar. And so really what you're ending up with is a culture of personality and wordsmiths.
Right.
If you come up with a catchy phrase or a catchy title and you really sell the heck out of it, then you might be able to break through the noise and become the next big thing. Mm-hmm. Or if you put together the proper title or a proper little exercise or something like that, then you can break through. But there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there who want to be the big next thing. I met a woman the other day who she's living in a small house. She's got a little jewelry business, trying to sell stuff online, and she has her own self-help book ready to go with a catchy title. And she thinks, I'm going to be there. I'm speaking at the Rotary Club next week. I'm going to be giving a 1-hour presentation at the Rotary Club, and which is great and fine and exciting. But why is that different? I think what a lot of these people need to be asking is, what are you bringing to the table that's new?
Right.
And what is your motivation for doing so?
Right.
Because it seems like every single person in the self-help world has an absolutely deeply held, burning desire to help other people. I just really care about other people and I want to help other people. And then you listen to them speak, and after a few minutes you realize, I really think this is about your own ego.
And everything to a degree is about that. But then it's just, when you've got people of like a stunted or marginal intellect, right? And as you mentioned, this guy earlier who just, raked a bunch of vendors who will never go back to that guy's event again. They suffer from dubious ethics too.
You would be surprised, because the same people will go back again and again and again and again.
Yeah, well,
because one of the things that and it is a built-in safety valve in the self-help industry, is there's virtually no room for critical thinking or criticism.
No, and if you do, if you push back critically, I mean, you're not saying the guy's a prick. You're just going, like The Secret, when that fucking movie came out. I wanted to do a sequel called Get Your Ass to Work. You don't get a Mercedes by wishing for it, right?
Right.
And that was the thing that pissed me off. Like, they'd show all these guys, and then, this was back in the day before anyone was, like, Googling everything, and this was when I was still on Yahoo. And there was a couple of these guys. I'd never heard of any of these people except for the Mark Canfield guy, the chicken soup dude. And I was going, who's that guy? And then I saw it again, because somebody gave me a DVD, and I saw it again. I started jotting these names. I looked up a few of them. It's like, okay, the reason the $10,000 check showed up in your mailbox, asshole, is that you're a published author with a New York Times bestseller. It's not like I'm a plumber. And, I got this check in the mail for $10,000 because.
And it just magically appeared.
Magically fucking appeared. And that's what made me so angry about that film. And a lot of my friends that were just diving into that shit. And it was just, again, this magical thinking bullshit to make up for the fact that, the economy's going into the tanker. People are losing their fucking jobs. It's that business, this business we're talking about right now, is a $1.4 billion a year in revenues. I think most of it's Tony Robbins, to be honest. But it's just like you're sitting there going, it just pimps on people's. It's like the snake oil salesman back in the day. This will cure everything. It's and try to pitch a perfect world.
It's that mystical. Like I said, I think it's almost like a religion.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is.
If you just believe, just click your heels together, and if you just believe strong enough, then all magical things. You just have to have just think positively, and it'll all come into your life.
See, when people
that's one of the reasons I have so much respect for Tony Robbins, is he doesn't play that.
He doesn't do that.
Says,
he doesn't do that.
He's got to work.
Yeah.
What does it take? Massive action.
Yeah.
First step.
He's the only guy who'll tell you, look, you got weeds in the garden. Go pull your fucking weeds. Everyone's like, oh, I'm going to wish them to go away. I'm going to wish them. It's that hyper positivity that pisses me off. You just said that a second ago, and I wanted to hang on that for a second, because if you push back,
when you twist that around, when you show up at these things, you go, I don't really get the message. I'm not really finding, I don't understand what you're saying, and I think there's more to it than your little, little ad that you put up there. I think actually it takes a lot more.
Yes.
Then you are ostracized.
Oh, absolutely. Because then you
are kicked out of the religion. You are not allowed to participate anymore.
Yeah.
And people will come down heavy on you because they're true believers.
Well, and they come down heavy on you in such a way that violates the training, doesn't it? Right? You're supposed to be open-minded. And you're supposed to be in a state to rise above such petty human conflicts. But they don't.
Depending on which training you're taking, yeah.
Right. Depending on which religion.
But to be for these people to just be immune from any criticism whatsoever, to me, seems counterproductive.
Well, it's not taught. You're not taught to think critically in any of this shit. I remember about 6 months ago, and you and I have a lot of the same friends. They went to that event. I don't know, it was probably more than a year ago. Eric Worre, I can say his name. He's out there. He's an internet guy. They went to that thing wherever it was in Vegas or somewhere, and I knew.
Well, now to be clear, for those of you who don't know, Eric Worre is not really into self-help personal development.
No, he's not.
He focuses specifically on network marketing
and how to do it and how to do it well. And he's I've been to his trainings. He's very funny guy. But the symptom of this is the point I was going to make is I knew all of my friends that went there because they did the thing he told them to do by the hundreds. Yeah. Okay, guys, take a picture and say, I'm really glad, whatever it was. And they filmed themselves saying, I'm really glad to be here. My name is da-da-da, whatever the fuck it was. It was like a 30-second or a 10-second deal. And my Facebook feed was just littered. I must have had 60 of these things. I'm like, really? Yeah. Really? Are you that much a fucking sheep? The guy tells you to do it and you fucking do it. Now, he's good at what he does. He's a business trainer. I wouldn't say he's a self-help guy because he really isn't. But it's just that, it's that symptom. It's that thing. That if you don't do it when the crowd does it, then you're not playing the game, man. If you don't play the game, you're not going to win at life. It's like, really? Really? I mean,
well, but also something to consider. And again, I like Eric, and I have a lot of respect for him. But Eric makes a lot of money off the GoPro events.
Fuck yeah, he does.
Somebody said one of the greatest ways to make money in the self-help personal development world is to write a book on how to make money in the self-help personal development world.
Pretty much.
So you're on this endless Mobius strip.
See, but then I know so many people in some of these businesses that are so addicted to this shit, they don't actually do the business. Right. I know people 20 years in Amway, never made a nickel, but they go to like 8-10 events a year and they spend a ton of money. And whatever people think of Amway or MLM, whatever, I don't give a shit. That's not this. I could do another hour on that. But the point is no matter what you do, you got to work at it, right? You wrote a book. It didn't write itself.
Well, and it depends. I want to just clarify something here. There's nothing wrong with having a positive attitude.
No, there's not.
If you want, and it's a lot better. I mean, if you're dead broke and you're living in the streets and life, is dealt you a tough hand and you've got a great attitude about it, it's a lot better than having a crappy attitude.
It truly is, but
a lot better than whining and complaining. That aspect of it is not bad. What I think is
controlling your state.
What I think is bad is as I said before, the grifters and the con men who are in it for a buck, who are simply soaking the masses without any compunction whatsoever.
See, and
they're just. Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm going to make one really quick point, and then please finish, because you just said something a second ago, and the attitude is important. You're controlling your state, right?
Right.
Because if I got cancer, I'm like, I'm never going to get well. Well, then I won't go to chemotherapy. I mean, my dad had a stroke, and he was shitty about his therapy. Now the whole left side of his body after 3 strokes is completely jacked because he wouldn't even play with the tennis ball. If he had a better attitude, like my other friend's father, maybe he would have been better or much better, right? But here's the thing: Jim Rohn had the best quote of that guy is, "Desire without discipline leads to delusion." And these grifter guys that you're talking about, these con men, which I agree with you, because 95% of them are just pure shit. They never succeeded in real estate, for example, never made 5 figures in real estate, right? But they're going to teach you how to be a better realtor, a better salesperson. They got their little thing, their ABC LMNOP system. And if you get out of bed and say LMNOP or 54321 or whatever the fuck it is, then you're going to be a better realtor. They don't teach you how. They pitch the delusion. They don't pitch the discipline. And the few guys that you mentioned, the Tony Robbins, the Jim Rohns, the Eric Worres, they're teaching discipline. And when Jim Rohn said that, when I thought maybe 18, 19 years ago when I first heard that quote, desire without discipline leads to delusion. That got me. And so that's
well, you had just mentioned something, and I think we were both at an event where Mel Robbins was speaking.
Is that the chick? Is that the 5?
I don't have anything against Mel. She seems to be a very nice lady. She seems to be a competent lawyer, and
she's hot.
And she found a little hook that really resonated with people, which was the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's the one.
And her whole thing is, when you have to do something, just give yourself a countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then go do it, and it will launch you forward. And I think this shows more about the audience than it does about Mel.
Well, that's the whole audience.
What I'm saying?
Yeah, that's the whole
audience had to be told that you have to get off your ass if you want to accomplish something. Oh.
You seem shocked by that.
I mean, I have to actually do something to get ahead?
You seem shocked by that.
I mean, I have to get out of... She was telling people, you have to get out of bed in the morning if you're going to have a life. Oh, that's what I've been doing wrong all these years. But now, does that say more about Mel, or does that say more about America?
Well, it's the same.
People have to be told that put down the phone, get off your ass, and go to work.
Well,
they have to be told that.
Well, isn't it the same America? I mean, I don't want to get political because I want to talk about your book here in a minute too, but isn't it the same America that bought Russiagate, hook, line, and sinker? Isn't it the same America that in the last 18 years we've seen nothing but wars based on lies, and now we've got people like foaming at the mouth to go into Iran? Same fucking America. And you guys like you
Okay,
and guys
just,
and
yeah,
guys.
yeah. Let's stay
Let's
out
stay
of
with the book.
that
But guys like you.
realm
But my point is
because
this.
you're sitting here. What you're saying is that that's America. What we're really talking about is this is human beings.
It's human beings.
The whole world operates like this.
Right.
You know, America is like America. It really is. If you've traveled around the world, this place is extraordinary. But in a way, like Jon Stewart says, it's extraordinary by default.
100%.
You know, we're like the prettiest girl in Omaha.
Yes. And because the prettiest girl in Omaha is surrounded by two oceans in Canada and Mexico, she can't be invaded against her will. So there's that.
But leaving that aside, there are apparently millions and millions of people out there who cannot, after all this time, cannot figure out that they have to get out of bed and go to work if they're going to be successful at anything.
Sure. Well, listen, man. Go ahead. No, you make a point.
I'm done.
Oh no, but I wanted so. Okay, I read your book, and for people who don't like reading, this is just a little bit longer than War is a Racket. So it's about clocks in at about 80 pages. So you can finish this in 2 days while you're in the bathroom. I swear to God, and you'll laugh harder, which means you'll push harder, thus cleaning out your bowels better. That's my ringing endorsement for the book. But seriously, man,
I need to put that in a television commercial.
Yeah. I'll say it.
You'll ever read while taking a crap.
I'll say it. I'll say it flat out. If you're having bowel issues, don't take X-Lax. Read this book. You'll push harder. No, but it's you invented this character. Talk about. Well, first of all, talk about the guy and how you invented him, because obviously you've been around, you've been a writer, you've seen things, you've seen all kinds of businesses and industries, and interviewed politicians, and you've interviewed everybody. I mean, you've studied the human condition between being in the theater and being a journalist and doing all. You know the human condition. How did you come up with this guy, Cal Cox?
Well, the first thing is there are certain things you can say as a character that you can't say as a human being. And when you create a character that has a point of view that is somewhat warped, you better make sure that people understand the difference between the character and the human being. And a couple of examples of this would be David Bowie with Ziggy Stardust.
Right.
Nobody thought that David Bowie was really from outer space. They thought that, well, a couple of people did, obviously. But most people understood that he was playing a character of Ziggy Stardust. Most people understood that Don Novello was playing the character of Father Guido Sarducci, and that Father Guido Sarducci was not a real Catholic priest, which is why he could say and do the kinds of things that he was doing.
Yeah.
Now, one person who got into a lot of trouble for not having that separation was Sarah Silverman.
Yeah.
Because Sarah does a character that is kind of a moron and says some really outrageous things.
Right.
But one time, her character did a joke that enraged people to the point where they had to have an episode with Bill Maher where she was confronted with all of this, and they couldn't separate Sarah, the idiot character, from Sarah, the human being, the comic who created it.
Right.
So I knew that if I wanted to go down this path, I had to create a fictional character who was doing so. And the kind of character who could say the kind of things like Stephen Colbert when he was doing the right-wing nut job.
Right. It was a character.
The Colbert Report was a character.
Right.
But now that he's doing late night, now he's being himself. Okay, right. So you can see the separation. So the things that he could say as Stephen Colbert, as the character, are not the things that he could say as Stephen Colbert, the late night talk show host. Same thing. Cal Cox can say things. Now, Dr. Cal Cox he's kind of a warped human being. He's a former college professor, university professor at Duquesne University. Everything I'm saying, incidentally, for those of you if you haven't caught on yet, is fictional. This is not real. Okay.
It's not real, kids.
So Dr. Cal Cox, he's a professor at Duquesne University in Boca Raton, Florida. At least he was. Now, obviously, Duquesne University doesn't exist. But he was until he was asked to leave following some unsubstantiated or uncorroborated accusations, some 30 or 40 accusations of sexual harassment. He just quietly kind of left. And one of his big passions, besides making very bad decisions in relationships, he's been married 4 times, all 4 times to strippers, three of whom worked at the same strip joint in Florida, and none of which lasted more than 4 weeks.
Oh, God.
He also has a burning desire. He idolizes Tony Robbins and wants to be Tony Robbins.
Right.
But Cal just doesn't have any of the skills that Tony Robbins, or the knowledge, or the intelligence, or the charm, or the charisma, or the height, or the teeth of Tony Robbins. But he does have that desire, and while he's not smart, he is clever. And so he decided that he would write a book for the people who don't really attend self-help seminars or do personal development. And so that would be like the bottom 20% of the population. So one of the quotes from his friends in a blurb on the book is, if you have no ambition, drive, or desire whatsoever, this is the book for you. And so that was the launching point. And he came up with what he thought were some really good ideas in his book called Win, The Ultimate Success Guide for Losers, Freaks, and Miscreants. So anyone who is a loser, freak, or miscreant, here's your roadmap.
And I love that I love that you have "win" in all caps. By the way, when I saw that title when you first sent me the book, I laughed my ass off, and then I thought, okay, I'll read it, whatever. And I was like a page in, I was pissing myself. I go, this can't be this funny all the way through, and it is that funny, and it gets dark, and I'm thinking, I'm laughing too much. I'm not the guy, I'm the wrong guy, because I think this is funny. This is dark ass shit, and but it's funny. It's like it's black humor. Did you base him off anybody you saw or knew, or just sort of like obviously there's not personal development guys out there that have been married 4 times as strippers, but did you base him off like some characteristics that you saw of some of these guys once you got up close to them, or where was your inspiration for Dr. Cox?
Well, very, very loosely, because I don't want to get into any litigation on this. But
well, I don't mean a who. My question is
there is. I did in my past. I had a news director who was a very odd duck.
Okay.
And the physical characteristics and the way that Cal speaks and things along those lines are somewhat inspired by this other person.
Okay.
The character himself is kind of a lot of the things in the book, are they're just a step away from things I've heard at self-help seminars.
Right.
I just took it to the next logical extreme.
Right.
So the content itself is really not that far from what you would get at a self-help seminar.
No, it's not.
An entire chapter. There's a whole chapter. I'm sure if anyone is familiar with the self-help world, you've heard of SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, artsy. I don't remember whether they're smart, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but yours is different.
So Cal decided, well, there's SMART goals for smart people. He came up with dumb goals.
Right.
Capital DUMB,
right.
dumb.
Right.
It stands for determined, underhanded, materialistic, and ballsy. And those are his four things, which is, again, a way of, it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Right.
It's like going for it. That's one of his little catchphrases to get people to read his book or go to his seminars.
Right.
It's just a slight variation from what is really out there.
Right. Well, see, and
they're not necessarily bad.
No.
Being determined is not a bad thing. Being underhanded. Oh, well, that's not ethical. Really? Well, look at all the people. Look at the New England Patriots. Look at Donald Trump. Look at the people who've been underhanded in their life and yet have achieved remarkable success.
Well, pretty much.
The list goes on and on and on of people who've done that. So it's not necessarily a bad tactic.
We'll see, and then
materialistic, and I talk about being materialistic. In this chapter, it's hard to have what I call a foamy goal. I want to be enlightened.
Right.
What the hell does that mean? And it takes years to kind of figure out what it means to be enlightened. I want a Porsche is pretty clear.
See, that's when it gets back to when we were talking about The Secret and this magical thinking bullshit. The one thing these coaches always kind of ignore. Because you said earlier, and you tied it well when you said, you gotta have, if you're homeless and you need a better attitude than being shitty because you need all the positivity you can get because you're homeless. But what a lot of these coaches in these programs kind of ignore is it doesn't matter what your attitude is. If you're looking to be successful, and I mean, and I don't even mean mega rich, but just to make maybe a little bit better than average living, have a place to live, take a couple vacations a year, or whatever you want, extra money. It's got to be about the vehicle. Right? Because I could have the best attitude ever and have gone to Tony Robbins and walk on fire, which I did, and I did walk on fire, by the way, and I know how to do it. I know the 4 steps to do it. I could walk on 15 feet of coals right now in a backyard. I need 20 minutes to prep. But the point of all that is
do you do children's parties?
I do children's parties, but no one's called me.
That's entertainment that you could actually monetize.
Quick side note. This is why I always ask people before they come on, did you listen to the show? I had a friend of mine that I knew from college reach out to me about the show, was offering some sort of sponsorship deal, and he came up with this brilliant idea that I should go to elementary schools and do an educational program for elementary schools about history. I said, have you listened to the show? Do you know what we do here? I say, fuck, I drink beer, and none of those PTA moms are going to want my ass. Are you kidding? Oh, well, I didn't really listen to the show. You didn't listen to the show, but you want to offer me what? Listen, go listen to the show and get back to me. That was 6 months ago, and the clock is ticking.
That's like inviting Doug Stanhope to speak at the Mormon Tabernacle Choir Retreat in Aspen.
I take that as a badge of honor, sir.
Yes,
but
as you should.
But that's the thing is like if you have this great attitude, right, and you're the fry guy at McDonald's. Well, you got a bitchin' attitude, right? But you're still doing fries at McDonald's. You're making about $10 an hour. Or 12, maybe if they're generous, and you still got to live that life, and that you'll have a better attitude, and that's awesome. But all this magical thinking bullshit is an excuse for a failed economy, and these guys make money in droves because people are going to some magic. And like you said earlier, you got to just get off your ass and work. But so Cal Cox comes up, so he's this guy, and do you have a persona? Are you gonna when you put the book out? Are you gonna start like?
Oh yeah, well I've actually created a whole. I'm doing a series of YouTube videos as Cal Cox, and promoting the book and talking about the book and answering emails, doing a live chat and things along those lines. Where Cal and he is Mr. Positive, but in that forced grimace kind of way.
I can see Bill Murray. I can see you and Bill Murray
trying so hard. Yeah. It's like he's really trying to make it here, guys. Come on. So I'm doing the videos, and obviously I want to promote you doing some other podcasts and radio shows and things along those lines. Hopefully that there's going to be some kind of resonance with people. And I'm not saying that everybody should, quit reading these books or going to these seminars or doing anything. I'm just saying, how about a little common sense?
Right.
Because Cal, in my mind, Cal is the natural result. Cal is what you get when the system's broken.
Right. Like Donald Trump.
And could be. I think the system was broken a long time before.
That's my point. He's a symptom of a failed. Cal Cox is a symptom of a failed system. Yeah.
Well, but there's not it's a world and not necessarily a system. And there's no rules. It's not like a university where you have somebody in charge at the top who has to answer to, you have to answer to, and they have to answer to their board and so on and so forth. It's just this, it's really quite an entrepreneurial world where all kinds of stuff can happen. You'd mentioned a few minutes ago about Jack Canfield. Now, Canfield has number one bestseller after number one bestseller,
yes,
but he only writes one chapter of every book that comes out, and people pay him to be in his next book.
Yes, they do.
So he's created another, way of monetizing what he does without having to do the work. Brian Tracy, incidentally, a friend of mine from years and years ago, we were the first people to bring Brian Tracy to the United States. This is back in the 80s. A lot of people don't know that Brian's originally from Canada, and he was trying to break into the U.S., so we had him come down for we started promoting his material here in Southern California. We're talking like the mid 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was but you should have seen his first videos. The content was fantastic. The videos themselves were really kind of embarrassing. Mm-hmm. And I like Brian. I've got a lot of respect for Brian. He's
I do too. Listen, I'm in sales. I've been listening to Brian Tracy forever, and what I love about that guy, it's not that magical bullshit. He tells you this is what you should do. If you're working the phones on a particular day, don't drink a lot of coffee because you go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom. That takes a lot of time. That's like common sense shit. When you're young or you don't know, what's common sense to you and me, somebody, if you've never seen The Color Blue, and then all of a sudden you see The Color Blue, you're like, wow, that's pretty amazing. No, but that's my point, though. He provides a genuine service.
So it's good information that he's delivering, even though some of it can be, kind of monotonous if you've been around a little bit. But Brian has also got an author workshop where you pay money to write your own book. And if you pay him money and write your own book in his program, he will endorse it for you. The endorsements are another really dirty little secret about this world is people get paid for those.
Oh, I know.
If you want Great Big Star to endorse your book, you pay them a fee, $1,000, $25,000, $50,000. They'll endorse your book.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. See,
which is theoretically going to generate sales. Most people who endorse books have never read the book.
Oh, 100%.
I don't think people are aware of that.
Well,
it's kind of this whole kind of magic trick that's going on with a lot of people, and with a lot of the people at the top of the industry, and the people who are attending all of the events. It's kind of a willful ignorance on their part. They don't want to see what's behind the curtain. They want to believe that it's all real. And so they continue on not looking at the wizard pulling the levers behind the curtain.
See, but to speak to the point, though, that and there's a few, like I said, I don't consider Brian Tracy self-help. He's more like if you want to be better in sales, and he teaches you different techniques that are smart, like how to word a question better so it's not aggressive.
But he's also marketed himself as in self-help.
Yeah, because to
get a wider audience.
Yeah, that's true.
Somebody say if you go out there and you try to find salespeople, I don't sell. No, hell no, I'm not a salesman. Nobody wants to do sales. There's only a small handful of people who want to do sales. Most people read everything. So Tracy knows if he sticks in that lane, then he's not going to make nearly as much money if he branches out into self-help, because everybody wants to improve themselves. And so he markets himself more along those lines. But there's only he makes more money.
But
again, nothing wrong with that.
But this is the challenge. This is the challenge with the addicts, though. See, because there's only so much magic out there. There's like 2 or 3 guys, and the rest are bullshit. They really are. There's like 5 guys max, and the rest are just bullshit. I mean, there's one guy I remember about 15 years ago, and I paid very little money to this guy, and he was more than generous. You talk about that vendor shtick that the guy was fucking these people over. So this guy would do the same deal, right? If you were part of his preferred people's network thing, instead of paying $300 to go to his Saturday deal, you got in for free, right? And so I knew a couple of guys that knew him, so I always got in for free. And to his credit, he would do a 4-hour deal, and it was nothing but content. Before the lunch break, he would pitch for 15 minutes. And then at the end of the deal, he would pitch for 15 minutes. And he had a table in the back. And he sold out every time he came out because people didn't feel like they were taken advantage of. They're going, shit.
Well, that's kind of the world that we're living in now, is people don't want to be sold to.
Right.
People are sick of advertising, and yet so many people insist on promoting that. The example I use about how advertising is dead is, have you ever watched a YouTube video and not hit skip ad?
I can count on one hand.
Yeah. Because we're sick of it. We've been bombarded. So there's a lot of these people who are telling the same old routine on how you have to make your sale at the end and what you're going to be selling people. If you're really that good, you don't have to sell.
That's right.
If your message is so clear and so powerful, then people will be flocking to buy your book. You don't have, and at the back, and today we'll have, just today only 25% off, and I'll throw in this, and I'll throw in that, but wait, there's more, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's shtick from the 50s used car ads.
Right, K-Tel.
Yeah.
Hey, so
Cal is trying to navigate this world, and he wants to become this great big motivational speaker. But when you read the book, you'll realize just how depraved he is. You know, there's a lot. He just doesn't understand.
Okay, well,
that like. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I want you to finish your point, but I want you to talk about the first couple 3 stories you got in the beginning of the book. Those things are fucking hilarious. But continue. He doesn't understand. And go ahead.
Oh no, he doesn't understand that he is completely amoral. He thinks he honestly, in his heart, believes that prostitution is a great way to make side cash, and has all kinds of neat tips for people. If you just go out and stand under a freeway overpass, you can make an extra $70 or $80 a night.
Right.
Why not bring some bottled water or soda and snacks? So while your John is pumping away at you, you can be offering them. They'll remember and come back. You know, he doesn't know that that's like that there's a moral issue connected with that.
Right.
Things along those lines.
Right.
So he even though he's very well intentioned, his advice, if taken to heart, could lead someone down some very dangerous and destructive paths.
Sure.
But he also doesn't realize that the people he's talking to probably, you know, his audience, which, as we said, is like the lower 20%, they probably know all this stuff already. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of this.
It's common sense to them.
But there's also, as we were talking, I'm using you as an example since you read the book and we discussed this. If you are considering buying the book, know that you will find something in there that will offend you. No matter who you are. You'll be reading along, you go, this is great, oh my God, I'm laughing my ass off. Now he's skewering my sacred cow. Because I get into politics, I get into religion, I get into relationships, and I get into drugs, no matter what, you're going to, as Abe, as many of you know, is probably the hardest person in the world to offend. And yet in the chapter on drugs,
it was one paragraph.
He was offended about my description of LSD.
It was one paragraph, and yes, I was. Because I have taken it, and it works.
I take exception to that. You didn't mind the stuff about prostitution. You didn't mind the stuff about religion. No, that didn't faze you at all.
Or selling drugs. No, it did not. But
now that's good. When I get into the whole issue of followers, John Maxwell wrote that book on the 5 levels of leadership. I have a chapter on the 5 levels of followership.
Right.
How dedicated are you? Because let's face it, for losers, it's a lot easier to be a follower than it is to be a leader. But that didn't offend you. No, you were fine with that.
I was fine with the whole thing, except for one small paragraph. It was about 6 sentences. That was it, and then I was just.
But that's what I mean. I mean, if you're gonna, the vast majority of people who've read, I'd say about 90% of the people say it's the funniest thing they've ever read.
Well, this is why I was worried for you, because I thought the book was funny as shit, and I thought, well, if I think it's funny, I don't know if he's going to sell these books because.
Well, again, and I'm putting a warning label on it, saying that if you were easily offended, don't buy this book.
Right.
I'm not trying to outrage people. I'm trying to amuse people. The audience for the book that I'm looking for really is the kind of people who would be in a comedy club. People who are looking for something that is politically incorrect. People who are looking for something that's more offbeat. This is not your Sinbad comedy.
No. You're looking
McNuggets. What part of the chicken do those come from?
Yeah. Well, no, you're looking for the guys that you're looking for the folks that understand Bill Hicks, or they understand Doug Stanhope, Bill Burr. Yeah, and that doesn't.
The list goes on.
Yeah, and that doesn't. That aren't quote offended because the guy said fuck or whatever, makes fun of certain taboo subjects. It's like people that you're not looking for the people that are offended by the word fuck, and they go, well, why do those comedians have to say that? It's not an intelligent person that says that word. Yeah, actually, it is, and it's called the English language, and all those words are in there. So. Fuck off.
Well, we live in an outrage culture, and
true story.
Political correctness has just permeated everything because of the internet, and there are thousands and thousands of people out there who are looking to be victims and find some way of twisting whatever was said into something bad about them. So they can be outraged and they can get rid of who is just on Saturday Night Live just a couple of days ago. What was some new comic for the beginning of this season got kicked off the show for something he said 15 years ago.
It wasn't even 15. It was like in the last 4 or 5 years. It was some. I didn't see the clip that they kicked him off for. Apparently, he said some homophobic shit, and they're like, oh, we don't tolerate that on the show, and they kicked him off.
Yeah, but he did it 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, it was like between 5 and 10, like 4, 5, 8 years. I would
love for everyone who is that outraged. I would love to go through their life with a fine-tooth comb, the way that they go through everybody else's stuff, and find the mistakes that they made, and then put that front and center. Make sure the whole world knows about it, so their lives can be destroyed.
Well, and this thing is like so with Cal Cox. The point of this character though is he does not understand this. He does not understand. He doesn't think he's being offensive. It would never dawn on him. It would come to him as a complete shock if all of a sudden the book got hot and some academic dean is looking for a professor of sociology and Kyle Cox's great book, and then he read it. And it wouldn't even dawn on Cal Cox, right? That this might be offensive.
Well, and it's also interesting because Cal, his response, he's so inoculated and so indoctrinated in the self-help personal development world that his only response can be positive. So if someone is lashing out at him, calling him, a sexist, homophobic pig, his response is, that's because you're a winner. Get out there and win. I absolutely agree with you. He doesn't know how to navigate that. It would never occur to him because it's got to be positive.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck to you. Get out there and win because you are a winner.
Oh,
that disgusting pig. That's because you're a winner. He doesn't know how to even argue about it, and he wouldn't be able to grasp what these people are saying. So when you see it in those terms, you can kind of see why I needed to create a separate character in order to do this.
Oh, 100%. And that's the thing is, when you're doing something like this, first of all, it's comedic. It's funny as hell. But you do have to create an alter ego, another world. It has to be a world this guy comes from. He has to have been married to 4 strippers for a month at a time. He has to, it has to be all that stuff to make this book make sense. It couldn't be just Bruce Sanborn doing it. You know what I mean? It's like Andy Kaufman when he used to do the Latka bit, or when he would come on different talk shows and just do different bits. But he wouldn't walk out and go, "Hey, how you been? Oh yeah, this is my bit." He would just walk out as that guy, and just do that. And he never got the separation, and so he took a lot of shit. But
he did but that was, and Kaufman was probably one of the greatest performers ever.
Yes, he was.
And he did that on purpose.
Oh no, he did.
Always wanted to leave the audience wondering, never really knowing what was going on with him.
Right.
And who the real Andy Kaufman. People today still wonder, who is Andy Kaufman? Who was this guy?
Right.
Because you never knew if he was faking it or if that was his persona or if he was really him or if he was Tony Clifton or, what was going on.
Right.
Just absolutely brilliant and genius. But there's other comics and other people who've done this type of thing. Richard Pryor used to do a couple of different characters when he was on stage.
Right.
And, Robin Williams would do the same thing, so it's not, and obviously some of the old time, comedians would do that. Some people would say that Don Rickles did that his whole career. He created this character.
Right. He was always in character when he came on any show or did his bit. And I hear he's a sweetheart of a guy. I mean, I hear everyone I knew that ever met him or ran into him were like, oh, the guy was a total mensch. He was just awesome.
Well, you could not get away with what he said and did if you were really like that.
True story.
Anthony Jeselnik has a very interesting take on that. He had to be the bad guy on stage because he's such a nice guy off stage. Mm-hmm. And apparently that's true.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that being the bad guy, being the maniacal person on stage that he is, worked for him on stage, but off stage he's not like that at all. And so he created that separate Jeselnik in contrast to who he really is.
Right, right.
I'm just drawing a line a little clearer.
Well, you created a character. You created a character.
Different name and persona entirely.
Yeah, and rightfully so, because you have other things you want to do in your life, and it's like when this thing takes off, and I'm sure it will. It's just nice that it's this thing, but then you're the author of this thing. And the difference between this guy, for example, or Kaufman, for example, and like say Pryor or Jonathan Winters, they would come out as themselves and then go into their bit. It wasn't like they walked out from the clock's at zero. This is who they are. They're walking right out and doing this. Like Don Rickles, that's who he was from word go when he walked on stage or came onto an interview.
Yeah.
It's different than the way Pryor did it or Jonathan Winters or Robin Williams. They would say, oh yeah, okay, and then and Robin Williams would be telling stories and then get into the voices of the characters he's trying to so that's kind of how he got away with it, because it was just him telling a story. So if he was doing like a Russian guy or an Arab guy or whatever, it never came off, whatever, because he's telling a story. You know what I mean? It's
the obvious one. I'm sure if we're going back a ways, but his takeoff from Two Gentlemen of Verona, Two Dudes from Venice.
Right.
That was just a brilliant, absolutely brilliant piece of work.
Yeah, it was. And
in comedy, you mentioned something earlier about how short the book is, and it's short on purpose.
Sure.
People who are outside of the industry probably don't know this or understand this, but your average comedy is short for a reason. Mm-hmm. You can only laugh so long. Mm-hmm. It only sustains so long. Your average comedy movie runs about 90 minutes.
That's right.
The average regular movie runs about 2 hours and 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. Comedy sketches, if they go more than 6 minutes, boy, you're getting into dangerous territory. Mm-hmm. Because that's tough it gets harder and harder to sustain. Mm-hmm. The core idea becomes harder to play out.
Right.
Over a longer period of time. Remember John Belushi as the samurai on Saturday Night Live?
Yep.
Those sketches were only 3 minutes long.
That's right.
Because really, that's Samurai Taylor. What else are you going to do with it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can't have him hanging up a sign and going to lunch. You can only take this.
Well, no, and then the few guys that tried, there's very few of the Saturday Night Live guys that took a 3-minute sketch and made it into a successful movie. Like Wayne's World was a good example of something that worked, right? But then when Tim Meadows tried to do the Cavassier guy, the DJ,
Ladies Man.
Yeah, that didn't work. When they tried to do It's Pat, I forgot her name now. That didn't work. Yeah. Stuart Smalley didn't work.
It's comedy. I think there's been 4 comedies that have won Academy Award for Best Picture in the last 100 years, or 80 years, however long the Academy's been around. Mm-hmm. They like to give it to big, splashy epics and to very serious dramas.
Right.
And anyone who's been in show business for any length of time, particularly in movies or in theater or TV, knows a truth that nobody wants to explore, which is comedy is freaking hard. Drama is easy.
Dying is easy.
You want an actress to cry on set. You want her to cry on cue. Throw a rock, you'll hit 20 of them. Mm-hmm. It's easy to do. You want a comedian, you want an actress to get a laugh. That's freaking hard.
Oh no!
Believe me, I had 7 of my plays produced in New York.
Yeah. The
hardest thing I did was casting those suckers because I was looking for people who could do comedy.
Right.
Because it's a comedy. Everything can be developed. You can develop your timing and so on, but there has to be a nuance to it that you have to be interested in pursuing. And most people don't have an interest in actresses and actors don't have an interest in pursuing. They want to express their soul, and they think their soul is dark, and so they want to do Lear, and they want to do the monologue from Glengarry Glen Ross and be bitter and angry and all of that. That's the easy stuff to do.
Right.
That's really simple. Try getting a laugh. Try doing something funny on stage. Well, man, it's brutal. So when I see a really funny comedy, and there's only like 10 of them in the last 20 years, movies that I've seen that I've literally laughed out loud.
Right.
Probably There's Something About Mary was freaking hysterical. Yep. Borat. After I saw Borat, I sat in my car laughing. I mean, I was in pain laughing in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes. I could not drive because I was laughing so hard.
Well, and then
the movie was just so over the top.
Well, and to speak to your point, I read an interview, over 20 years ago now, with Val Kilmer. He was pushing some movie, and this Vanity Fair article that they did, and the person asked him a lot of good questions, and she said, "Hey, your first 2 movies right out of Juilliard were comedies, but you haven't done a comedy in like 10 years." He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to do them anymore." And she's like, "Well, why? They were funny." He goes, "Yeah, well, I threw up every day on the set because I knew I was the guy, and if it wasn't funny, this movie was going to suck. And drama is infinitely easier than comedy." And I was like, "Wow, I've never heard anybody admit that before." But that's why Real Genius and Top Secret were the first 2 comedies he did, and he never did them again. And the only times he's ever been in a comedy is if he's like the side guy to the main guy. He'll be like the side guy.
Well, he did that in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Right, where he wasn't the guy. He was the side guy.
He was Robert Downey was the guy,
right?
But he was in it, and he was funny.
He was funny as shit. And he did this. Yeah. He did an episode of Entourage where he plays this overweight pot dealer. He's got this long beard and the long hair, and he was funny as hell. But it was in a long time either. It was like you said, his whole thing in there was maybe total 5 minutes between 2 scenes, and then he was out, right? But to speak to your point, that's it's I don't know any actors that revel to try comedy. It's hard.
Well, one of the reasons I like writing is because I get to I can kind of perfect it and hone it down without having to do it in front of a bunch of people, which is what comics do.
Right.
Comedians, it takes you a really good top flight comic. We're talking about a Joe Rogan. We're talking about Bill Burr. Those guys will go out and they'll do a year, maybe 2 years on the road and in clubs, honing down an hour of material.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Getting it down. And if you were to go to, the Comedy Store tonight and see Rogan, you're not going to see his A material because it's not there yet. He's still honing it down. He's working on it every night, getting it better and better. You'll see some good stuff, but they're working out the material on stage in front of people. People don't understand stand-up. They think that it's so easy to do, or all you're doing is standing up and talking. Right. There are so many nuances to comedy that people don't even understand. Right. The intelligence that it takes to be a really good comic, and it dates back centuries. If you go back to the Dark Ages, the most powerful man in the kingdom could be the court jester. Mm-hmm. Because everyone else in that courtroom, in the king's chamber or whatever you want to talk about, they were all inherited. It was the earls and the dukes and the kings and the lords. They all had their properties handed down to them. The jester was the only one who got it on merit. And he got there because he could entertain people and make them laugh.
Right.
But also, that was like half his job. His primary job, the reason you see them in the old paintings and movies and so on, the jester sat next to the king, and he was considered an idiot. He was considered a fool. He was considered a moron. So he could say and do anything because he was an idiot, a fool, and a moron, although he was not. And when one of the dukes or lords would be presenting his case before the king, he'd be doing so most favorably so that he would look good. The jester's job was to take his words, twist it around, make it funny, and show his true motivation in presenting such.
Right.
The king or queen could then make a decision based on the other side of the argument that was presented by the jester.
Right.
So a lot of these people learned early on, you don't need the king on your side, you need the jester on your side.
That's right.
And there were many jesters that were the most powerful people in their realm. Mm-hmm. But that was the origin of comedy. Comedy wasn't just about making people laugh. It was about making people see things differently.
Well, the whole history of it is speaking truth to power. The whole history of it. So when I see these sellouts, it pisses me off. But the whole history of comedy is to speak truth to power. It is the jester. It is the guy, pointing and laughing and going, "Hey, isn't that stupid?" And we've lost that in the mainstream.
Which makes it kind of ridiculous right now. We live in a world where it's very. I don't know how comedy is going to survive in the so-called mainstream media. I don't know how people. I've given up on screenwriting because there's just the movie business has changed radically. It's not anything like it used to be when I started writing. And when I hear the stories about what's going on in television and hear the stories about what's going on in movies, about how what is supposed to be dangerous and edgy is supposed to be inclusive and gentle. I'm wondering, how is this going to survive?
Right.
But I also see, it seems like there's a major shift going on. Does anybody really watch Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon anymore?
If you're over 60, yeah.
Does anybody sit up to watch The Tonight Show anymore? And there's so many of them. Of the late night talk shows, I think really Conan O'Brien seems to me to be the only one who's really doing anything interesting.
Yeah,
the rest of them seem to be, and I don't mean to offend them because I like all those guys. I really do.
But that's not their lane.
Letterman once said.
Yeah, that's not their lane though. We got to wrap up here in a minute or two, but that's not their lane.
No, but the world has shifted from that when Johnny Carson was king, and if you were on Carson, you had a career.
Right.
To Joe Rogan on his podcast has had over 1 billion downloads.
Right.
So is that the new realm? Is that the new world over here in the in podcasts and the internet, and so where people can have long form discussions and people can get in depth in issues you can really understand.
Well, let me make this point, and then the last word is yours, and we got to wrap up. The reason why it's changing is because people want the truth. They want to laugh, but they also want the truth. And when we used to go to guys like Pryor and Lenny Bruce and Robert Klein, when we used to go to Bill Hicks, we still go now to Bill Burr's special's got a gazillion downloads, I'm sure. You're gravitating more toward that. The cutesy pie. I want a talk show. I want to be Jimmy Fallon. I don't want to offend anybody. That shit's over. And it was never in style anyway. It became something because Johnny Carson would piss people off. He'd get cards and letters, right? And he would bring on comics, and he would maybe kind of tone their material down a little bit. Hey, leave that joke out. But for the most part, Bill Hicks was doing Bill Hicks, right? When he went on Letterman, he got edited that, or he got dropped that one last thing before he died. But he was on Letterman like 9 times, doing his thing, right? He didn't say fuck, but he did his thing. And so it's like people now are at a point now they're so sick and tired of because it's with the internet, it's not impossible to check corporate media. Right? So when someone says, oh, no, we need to go to war. And you go, well, wait a minute. We said that the last 9 times. You guys lied the last 9 times. More and more people are just wanting the truth. And it's the people that want to be mollycoddled and nannied and weaned, the over 60 crowd, who want to think like the baby boomer assholes who want to think like everything's just like it was when I was a child. Gunsmoke was on TV. Like those people, you lost them. They're done. But comedy's job purely
but
simply.
There's a lot of millennials who want to be mollycoddled, and they want all niceness, and they want safe spaces, and they want trigger warnings, and they want all that too.
Well, and then fuck them. Fuck them, because then Joe Rogan's not for them. Jimmy Dore's not for them. Lee Camp's not for them. Fuck, to a way lesser degree, I'm not for them. They can have their crap. I'm not going to tone down. Everyone's been suggesting, you need to make a dating episode. Go fuck yourself. I'm not going to do a dating episode. Bring on a bunch of waddling, whiny assholes who can't get laid on Facebook. Fuck you. I'm not going to do that. That's not what this show is. Show is to bring on people like you, to speak some truth. And whether people are not, they like it or not, I don't give a shit. I'm having a good time.
I don't know that people are looking for truth. I think that, and this is unfortunate, but I think most people are looking for confirmation of their beliefs. I think people are looking for a way of. A lot of people are looking for a way of simply selecting information. It's that confirmation bias, selecting information that will make them feel better about themselves and the shitty life that they have. So a lot of people are doing. So I don't know that people are necessarily looking for truth. I think there's a handful who are, and there's a number who are. But I think the vast majority of people, when it comes to comedy, they just want to laugh. If it's funny, let them laugh.
Right, but
if it's not funny, you know what? Don't go to the show. Don't read the book. Don't watch the movie.
And that's my point.
It's very simple.
And that's my point as we wrap up. If they want to laugh, they're going to buy your book. If they want to be nannied and weaned, go watch Rachel Maddow. And on that note, guys, we're out of time. My guest has been award-winning journalist, author, playwright Bruce Sanborn, who's got a new book coming out in a little bit here called Win. The Ultimate Success for I can't even talk today. The Ultimate Success Guide for Losers, Freaks, and Miscreants. And you're going to be able to get it on multiple platforms online and in the bookstores and everything else. And look for Dr. Cal Cox to be making appearances, hopefully all over the place. Again, guys, you can be a supporter of the show on patreon.com/thebittertruth. And if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, you're supposed to. Sleep tight.